Trust me when I tell you this is one call you do not want to heed. I repeat, if you hear the call from these fine young women telling you to go somewhere, do not go where they tell you. Trust me. Howdy. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, and this is the Q&A. My agenda is simple. Each week, I plan to bring you in-depth insight into the creative process of storytelling. You know, folks, today, this is a movie I absolutely loved at Sundance 2021. It's Mayday, and we are very pleased to have with us writer-director Karen Cinorre to discuss her debut feature film. You know, Mayday is a lot of fun. It reinvents mythology for a whole genre of storytelling. It is surrealistic storytelling, which is rare, by the way, and it's done so well. This is one of those movies that I would tell you, if you're going to watch it at home, right, because it's available on demand, watch it with headphones because the sound design is so fantastic that you really want to hear it all. Unless you have a great surround sound system, you don't need headphones then. Of course, you could also see it in theaters, and I'm sure the sound will be great in theaters as well. Speaking of seeing Mayday, though, this was a virtual screening that I did where hundreds of people from all over the place got 48 hours to watch Mayday and to hear the Q&A before everyone else, and it's totally free. So if you want to get involved with the virtual screenings that I'm doing, and we would love to have you, feel free to sign up over at backstory.net/events. And over there, you'll be able to attend our events, either in person when they finally return, or as virtual events, which are a lot of fun and make it easier for everybody, because for this virtual event, everybody had 48 hours to click the link and watch the film and watch the Q&A. So anyhow, it's our purpose here to try and connect audiences to filmmakers, and virtual screening is a great way to do it. Obviously, the podcast and the Zoomcast in YouTube is great as well. Karen was very forthcoming about her creative process and what it took to get this film made, so I know you'll dig this episode. And speaking of things to dig, I hope you also check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. You could read us on a desktop or laptop or via our iPad app, Backstory. You know, if you've never read us before, you could, of course, check out our free issue. And after you've read the free issue and you decide you want to support independent film journalism and become a subscriber, you could use discount coupon code SAVE5. That will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription to Backstory Magazine, and we would love to have you. As you know, you could read us on a desktop or laptop with your credentials. And if you subscribe through backstory.net, and I hope you do it there, more of your money will stay with us and not go to Apple. And you could still use your login credentials to read us on an iPad through the Backstory app if you have an iPad. So please subscribe through our website. We would love it if you do that. Look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and Spotify and iTunes and my Zoomcast watchers on the Backstory Magazine YouTube page support my passion project. So thanks for considering becoming a Backstory subscriber. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right into our interview with writer-director Karen Cinorre about her debut feature film, Mayday. It's good to see you. How's it going?
It's going great. Good to see you too.
Well, so I saw this from my home at Sundance last year because we were all home for it. And I got to tell you, I absolutely loved it. And the first thing that I want to say to anybody listening here is that if you do watch this movie from home, the sound design is so incredible that I highly recommend you actually use headphones if you can. So you hear an even more enhanced version, unless you have an amazing version in your living room, because that's how good it was. Okay, so I want to get to know you first a little in this non-spoiler section that we're in. And, you know, did you go to school for this? Did you go to film school? Did you study filmmaking?
I studied filmmaking. I went to film school, went to, normal college, liberal arts. And I went to Brown University.
Okay.
And I met the film teacher there. There were just a few film classes, like 2 film classes, 2 video classes. I think that was it. And no film department per se. And the film teacher there was named Leslie Thornton, And her film class was just incredible. I actually met Sam there, my DP, and my husband. She makes her films herself. She loads up the camera. She does the lighting. She writes everything. She edits. She sound designs.
Right.
We had to learn how to do everything, even show our films, even project them, and do the transfers from film to video. And it was just an incredible experience because she didn't tell us how to make a film or what a film was. Absolutely nothing. Just kind of incredible guidance, like try to make a film that's with one roll of film that's not beginning, middle, and end, but maybe of a more Japanese concept of haste. And that's it. We'd be like, how do we light it? And she's like, I don't know, just like put a light bulb on and hit it. I don't know, whatever you want. So
okay, I love it.
And I thought at first that was crazy. And then I realized now, after you saw the work that came out of that class and how strong it was, I realized that she's a total genius, because what she was doing is she was helping us not try and be something we weren't. And we learned how to do the thing, but we weren't told what it should be in any way. So the work was incredibly unique, and you just had to find it yourself. It was this incredible exploration of like what your style is without any interference. She like protected people's voices in this incredible way. So
that's fantastic. And that sounds like a really safe space to start in and a good way to go. I guess the question would be, what did you do when you got out of school? Because it's a very confusing time for everybody. And, I was looking on your IMDb and you were an actress in 2009's Turn of the Century, where you were prima ballerina.
I don't know how you track that down.
So was acting a path that you were interested in at first?
No, I had a friend named Darcy, who's a comic book artist, who started her own public access TV show. And I actually like acting. I did a lot of it in high school and college, but it wasn't something I was pursuing. But back then, we didn't have the internet in the same way we do now. Public access TV was kind of where it was at in New York. And she did this incredible show with this incredible work, and I helped her film it. And it was sort of just three of us, and we had to do everything. So you ended up acting in it sometimes. She just was like, okay, now you're this. So Darcy created a character based on my crazy parasite that I got when I was dancing. And it became a whole character on the show, and we would shoot everything in our apartments. And it was just a really fruitful time of making what we wanted to make. And we'd meet people on the street who knew the show, and it was fun.
That's awesome. And then, the next thing that I know that you did was kind of art department, set decorating on a show called Green Porno, if I have the title and dates correct.
Yeah. Production wise, you could skip ahead to that. I did a lot of curating and experimental film distribution, but that was a really fun project. I don't remember how I got on it exactly, but Isabella Rossellini was doing a series of films for the Sundance Channel, and she's still working on this today. She does it as theater, and it kind of went all over the world and took all these different forms. But right at that time, she was just starting them, and she was playing creatures, animals, bugs, and explaining how they had sex with each other. And so she would make a short film for a bumblebee, for a spider. And me, two art department guys, first day in the studio, just making that. And it was so great because it was the way I like to work. Just a couple people just making crazy fun, but like actually well-researched scientific films. So, and then my husband came on and he started shooting them, and we made tons and tons of them, and she just kept going and going. I think she has her PhD now in zoology, and that was quite a ride. So fun.
And you also did the shorts Plume in 2010 and Last Date in 2016. So that's you then getting out there, flexing your directing muscles in the midst of all these other things. What were the biggest lessons for that?
Just general apparatus of a film set, writing something, holding it all in your mind, taking it into the film set, working with the crew, learning how to translate it, and then bringing it back and, editing it and finding it again, find the original idea that then hits the chaos of a shoot and the unpredictability of it and how to communicate. Also, a lot of that was just making stuff myself as well, making the sets, setting up the sets,
Oh, okay. That's cool.
I just sort of like a very like hands-on. I mean, the thing that Leslie taught me never really left me until I'd say, I think Mayday was when I had to let go of not being the person making things on the set.
Right. Yeah, it was a bit of a bigger production. Well, getting to Mayday, when did the idea first hit you? What do you remember about the how it percolated in your mind?
It was if I remember, because it was years and years ago, I think it's two or maybe three things. But I was just talking on a panel about horror movies, and Mayday's not a horror movie, but we were talking about how our ideas emerged from like an atmospheric place. And I remember hearing this myth of the sirens, or reading it in high school, of these half bird, half women who were on the cliff, and their songs would lure sailors to their deaths. And I thought it was a really beautiful, dramatic myth that just seemed so wrong. Like, it seemed strange to me that women are always the caretakers of people from cradle to grave, and that they were considered so dangerous, and their voices were considered monstrous and it's too alluring to, you couldn't even listen to them. You had to stuff your ears full of cotton. Was very intriguing to me. And so I had this sort of idea around that, and I could see the coastline, and I could sort of hear the sort of staticky sounds of voices, and I could see this atmosphere. And then the image of like something below the water started coming to me. And so it started to build. And then once the atmosphere was there and the sound was in my head, then the plot and the characters started to sort of get woven in through that.
That's fantastic. And we're going to talk a bit more about the siren myth and the mermaid myth in the spoiler section, but that seems like a great start. I want to talk about your creative habit when you're writing from home. Was this your first feature-length screenplay that you had sat down and written, or had you been playing around with other scripts over the years that just hadn't been produced?
No, this is my first screenplay. It was a short for a little while that actually with the Green Porno team I was going to make as a short, but then I was very much encouraged by my DP / partner, Sam Levy. He really wanted to make it a feature. He wanted me to make it as a feature. He wanted to shoot it. So he really encouraged me to give it a try. And so I wrote it out into a feature, and it was a really interesting experience. I had to find my way through that. I had to develop a way that I could do it.
Let's talk about that, because it's always fun to hear how somebody is navigating those rough waters, to use the sea terms of Mayday. So did you outline, or had you written a treatment of any sort before you started writing?
I didn't do a treatment. I didn't do an outline. I did try note cards up on a board.
Okay.
And like the note cards became sort of like a madness. Like I looked like a crazy person. I just had so many note cards and then pieces of paper, and I could phrases like that the girls would say. And then some of the phrases would end up over here with one character, and the characters started to sort themselves out on the wall. And then certain themes started to emerge, and I could see it all to the side of me. But the real work and the concentration and the hard part for me was really just starting at page 1 and then writing it to the end. And that's requires so much concentration. And I had to develop all sorts of routines for being able to concentrate that way and to hear the music of their words and the film. So I had to wake up and not talk to anyone, not hear anything, and start writing. So I couldn't hear a word. It would ruin it. Like I needed to come right out of dream onto the page. And so I found that was the only way I could get anything out. So I had this weird life where I had to do that. And then, life is life. So you have to communicate. I don't live alone in the forest. So I would then have to take care of work or whatever it is I'm doing. And then I'd have to get really quiet for a long time to go back into the script, and it was never as good as that morning work. So then
That's interesting because a lot of writers I talk to, some of them are night writers and they love the night because everybody leaves them alone. And
again,
morning writers is exactly what you talked about as well, is they just want to do it before they come into contact with anyone. And it seems like you were doing both ends.
Yeah, you have to protect your inner ear or whatever it is. It's like it can be destroyed by the sound. So it makes a lot of sense to me that some people write early in the morning. I don't feel great at 4 a.m. I mean, I'll be on set and be fine, but sitting alone in a room, I live in New York City and I like life around me, but it's just right near me. I can't hear words or even music because what I'm trying to find is the song that is the writing. Like I'm trying to hear the tune and the rhythm, and it's very delicate. And then when it came time to figure things out, like how does this movie end? Because I wasn't sure.
Wait, don't get into the end because we'll talk about that a lot.
How it ended. I'll just tell you how I found a way to figure things out, the big parts of the film. So I live by the Williamsburg Bridge. I would listen to music and walk across the water. And I still do that every day. It's how I come up with my ideas. And it's also how I test out music for the score. If the music can carry me across the water, I know it's good music for the movie and any movie I'm making. But particularly these character arcs and where they needed to go and how to get them there. Sometimes the silence wasn't going to do it for me. I had to be moving and I had to be near water, over water, and walking a straight line and just not having to worry about traffic. It's just, you can walk and you don't have to think. And then that's when the stuff would percolate out. Over time, I could be like, I can see what she's doing. And so those walks and that quiet were probably my two biggest tools.
That's great. And so just to get a sense of your sprint, did you have a page count that you wanted to hit each day, or did you have a certain amount of hours that you wanted to hit each day writing?
Hours, I think. I'm sort of a neurotic person who feels if I'm not working, like I'm of no use to anyone. So I don't want to like waste any time. So I wanted to write as many hours as I possibly could in a day. And then I found I could write longer and longer and longer. And then I remember I would start writing almost feverishly, like into the night. And so like that.
That's great. How long did it take for you to get to your first draft?
I don't really remember, but I would say the whole process took about a year. I don't think I had a beginning to end for a very long time. I think I worked on the first half for a long time and had that and then that and then that. And it was quite a while until I had the end.
There's a lot to talk about with the ending, so we'll get there, of course. You know, some writers get writer's block. If you did, what did you do to battle it if you got it?
You just do it anyway. And that day's work is perplexing. This one little thing will come up that day and you don't have to worry that you didn't do your page count or you didn't have your hours in. It's just, you just have to show up and something will come out. If it doesn't, it's still the practice that gets you to the next day when something.
The best way I've ever heard it described is progress versus perfection.
Oh, yeah. So, if you're a perfectionist, you'll never finish because
you'll never finish. And, it's interesting that this is your first screenplay because when a writer finishes a script, they're going to give it to their friends for notes. And the question is, what was it like for you to get notes on this, your first screenplay? Because based on what people are saying, you could be
terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying. I wanted to give it to this incredible writer, Rebecca Godfrey, who I think I went to a reading of a chapter of one of her books and she's a friend of a friend. And I found her to be like the most exquisite writer. She teaches creative writing at Columbia and she's a bit of a legend there. So I was able to get my script to her and she said she'd read it and it was terrifying. But she loved it and has been supportive of the entire process of getting here to, she's coming to the premiere this week. So yeah, it's really hard to open yourself up. And Sam, my partner, my DP, he would read earlier drafts and you would feel really brutal sometimes when it was like, it is not ready. This part is really flat or like, because he's a very good filmmaker and he's wasn't even looking for any kind of logic or anything. He's just looking for like pacing and momentum and things like that. So he's a very musical person, very good ear. So that was really helpful. And I started showing it to people. You get a lot of notes. Then when you go out broad, you get a lot of notes. And this happens in filmmaking too. When you start showing your rough cut, you can choose to get a lot of notes. And what I found is getting notes is a bit like reading tea leaves. You don't necessarily take the note to heart exactly the way it's given to you, but you can sometimes you say, oh yeah, I get it. Like, but sometimes it's someone feels something about your film or your writing, and they say it's this, but it's actually something else that comes right before it, like you didn't set it up right. So you're always trying to, like, I don't know, take the notes in, not let them freak you out. Like a friend of mine is a very good book publisher, and he says he treads very carefully, because he said he's like, I've seen people put their fingers into people's novels and just muck them up, because it can psychologically screw you up if someone.
Well, it's tough for writers too, because you're getting sometimes diverse reactions and you're not sure which way to go. And it seems like one of the greatest ways to navigate it that I've heard is if a whole bunch of people that don't know each other are giving you a similar note, it means there's something up there. Like there's no conspiracy. There's something to look into.
Yeah, you start to see trends. And the trend is very interesting. You know, so a bunch of different people are saying something similar. You listen to them.
What was a note that was kind of eye-opening for you? Something that we might have to save it for the spoiler section if we need to, but maybe just something about your writing or something that influenced your creative process, because there could always be bad notes, but there could be good notes too.
I think it was pacing notes. Pacing, getting the pace, getting the rhythm, getting that going, and not, it's almost like, I was just reading about how Seiji Ozawa would study his scores. And it's like, it's not about the notes, it's about the longer phrases. So to think more about these longer phrases and how they all tie together, that kind of perspective was helpful to me, because you can get very myopic in how you're putting it together.
Well, so you've spent a year, you got it done, you got it in good shape, you're starting to get it out. Did you attach a cast first, or did you raise like a budget first?
I didn't. I showed it to some producers that I knew, and I started showing it around. I didn't really know. I didn't have a super plan about how to do it. The people I went to school with, you know, people who came before me are people like Todd Haynes, who that model was very interesting to me. It's kind of going away, where independent films get made because someone writes something, then they find private investors, and then they make it, and then they go to a festival and they try and sell it. And that's what I did. But I just got lucky because I showed it to enough people. I think it scared a lot of people because it's not a specific genre. That was a note I got a lot. And people actually asked me to make it a specific genre, or to create it, make it into more of a video game that had like very specific rules, and to really veer away from anything that was at all untraditional in terms of how we classify things. So
that's actually why I loved it. Like that's my favorite
stuff. That's always my favorite stuff. That before the genres, which we made up, right? They're not in nature. Like we made them up. So I love like the dawn of cinema when there was no genre, and like, you know, someone who was a science photographer would be showing films with the surrealists. Like everything was a film and possible, and it's such a rich time before everything's calcified. And
that's why it's so rare to see surrealist storytelling, which was great here, because it wasn't paying homage to different conventions. It was being its own beast. And it actually makes sense in the logic of its own universe as well. So, I mean, it's really great that you never had to pay for that. Are you able to tell us what your budget was that you raised?
It was a small independent budget. That's really the crux of it. Is
okay. And what was your schedule?
Our schedule was 35 days, I think.
Oh, wow.
It pulled me to that, but I think it was, 2019. I remember the dream for me was having 40 days. I didn't get it, I don't think. but it was a wild ride. So I don't exactly remember. I think we had an extra day at some point.
That's
but
great.
yeah,
And it was shot in New York. Is that right?
no, I shot the whole thing in Croatia in
Croatia. Okay, because I saw like a whole bunch of New York stuff at the end.
Yeah, we did post in New York. I live in New York. We edited it and did all the sound design or the sound mixing, and all the music was built here. So, but the shooting was in Croatia, beginning to end. And
it looks beautiful.
Thank you. Croatia's great.
And so that included your interiors in Croatia as well?
Yeah, we did it all there.
That's great. Now, what was something really important for you to prep as a director? Because, when you have, for a Sundance film, 30 plus days is a lot. So that's fantastic for your debut. And obviously, Sam, I'm sure, knew to tell you to try and get that many days so you can really be luscious with your cinematography. But what was something that was really important for you that you learned about prep as a director? Because you got to make your days, you got to stay on budget and schedule. What was something that helped you out as you prepped for your first feature?
Well, because we make our own stuff, it's like, and I had a tradition of making my own stuff, making the sets, producing it. We're producers on it as well. And I don't know, it was a bigger beast, but it's funny because I am always making a lot with a little. So that wasn't new. It is luxurious sounding to have 30 days, but when you have action sequences, stunts, a big ensemble cast, it's all shot in weather. There are balloons that go through the air, and there's
right.
We tried to make a surrealist action film, right? So we were very much like aware that it was going to be a wild ride. So prep was just intense. You just and plan for every variable. You try and shot list what you're going to do, even though you don't know the exact terrain and it's going to change, but you just try and be as ready as you can. Sam and I went over the script many, many, many times. And then we did the same thing with our AD, Yora, in Croatia. And you just have a tight schedule and you stick to it, and you're very strict. You're very, very strict. And the thing I learned most was that you don't have a lot of luxury, right? So I compare being on a film set, especially one where we're trying to do so much action, to being on every single amusement park ride at the same time. And it just doesn't stop. They don't stop. And you're on it and you're going up and you're going down, you're going loop to loop, and you're going fast and you're falling and all of that. And the thing I learned most was that you cannot hesitate for 1 second to say what you want. A split second of not saying it, like hesitating. Sometimes, like my art department delivered things that were incomprehensible, and they would work all night and kill themselves. And I remember thinking, I cannot ask one more thing of these people. They're in the sea all night, lashing the set together, but it's my job it helps preserve the film. It preserves their work. That's what I'm there to do. So you just cannot even let a second go by where you don't say what you want. And there's no reason you can't do it in a perfectly calm and polite way. So
that's great advice. And the art direction of the film looked absolutely beautiful. I mean, just getting just the analog feel.
Oh yeah.
That was just perfect to have there. It was just great. We are going to get into the spoilers now. People just watch this in a virtual screening, so they've already seen the movie. But for our podcast listeners and iTunes and Spotify and our watchers on the Backstory Magazine YouTube page, we are now going to get into spoilers. So if you have not yet seen Mayday, press pause. Go rent it on demand. See it that way, or see it in theaters. Mask up. Go see it in theaters, because you should definitely see Mayday. And we are going to get into the spoilers right now. So right down to it. The brilliance of the movie, because at Sundance, you're watching a couple movies a day, and you're like, okay, within the first 5 or 10 minutes, where are we going with this? What's going on? And you're pointing this delicate portrait of a woman that's kind of in her own storm in her life by the shitty men in her life, that sometimes surround her, and you're painting a portrait of assault, but then she transcends to a different world. And she's with these four other gals that you created this great ensemble with. And it took me a while to realize the concept that you were playing with the idea of mermaids. And what's so fascinating, because people have been doing this a bit in recent years, And, you know, there's been mermaids as vampires, and like they've tried to justify why are they killing the sailors? What is their favorite thing? Like in some old parables, it was they wanted to get the treasure, right, out of the sunken ships, and they could go do that. Here, the brilliance is it's a revenge tale. They're fighting back against men because they've decided that, you know, they're predators. And in the case of, you know, these girls' experiences, they are. And then there's a gray area in which there's a lot of strangers coming to the island that they're just killing as well because they just want an affront. At what point did you realize that that was going to be the grounding of the movie and the motivation for their actions, in which you were going to make the war between the sexes literally a war?
Well, I kind of came at it very differently in my mind. And I remember when people started talking about it using the word revenge, I was really shocked because you start to hear people talking about your movie when it's out there. And I didn't recognize these words. Of course. I mean, yeah, you could look at it and say, oh, she's getting revenge on this person. The way that my mind put it together was more about like conflict and violence. Those were words. The word violence came to me a lot. And so to have like a woman who in her real life could not escape a kind of violence. And to me, it's like, I love a Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe kind of a thing where you go through a very ordinary portal into something, you know.
Absolutely. And you did that here with the oven. She crawls through the oven to the other world.
Yeah. And I love that something ordinary can take you away like that. And she brought the violence with her, right? So to me, it's like, I guess, you know, I'm still learning about what all this means too, I have to say, but I think it's like a figurative war. It's like it's a war inside herself. Because when something happens to you and you kind of can't tell anyone, or you feel like you can't tell anyone, and it's like so hard, there's this raging war inside of you. And I didn't think of it necessarily as a war against even the particular people who created the problem, although it was interesting to explore that too. It was more like, how is she going to deal with this? What's she going to do? Is she going to stick her head in the oven and die? Or because that happens all the time. Or is there another way? And what would that other way be? And what would it feel like? And what would it look like? And how could we transform this young woman and give her a way out? So that isn't bleak, right? So right. that was my drive. Like that was what kept me going and kept me writing all those weeks, months, and days. I wanted to save her.
And there is an empowerment there, obviously, because they're taking matters into their own hands. The only reason I said revenge was because literally the man that assaulted her, they hunt down in the forest and kill. Yep. So to me, that spoke revenge.
No, it is. And it's interesting, but she doesn't do it.
Right. No, you're right.
So the people, the women who have been in this, let's call it Oz, I sometimes just call it Oz, right? They're there killing people like sirens. They're luring men to their deaths. And her perpetrator comes in, they do the same thing. And they've been there a long time, right? So, and they come from the same kind of place Anna does, and the main character, and they have gone through the same kinds of things. And so now what I imagined is that they are maybe no longer alive, right? So they are in some kind of limbo, liminal space, hell, heaven, whatever you want to call it. And they get to do whatever they want, like anything. Like they can be rageful and mean. They can fly through the air. They can, anything, you know, and a psyche like that could do anything is going to do some crazy shit. Right. So yeah. they have an intimacy and a friendship from the kinds of things that bonds them together, but they also have this crazy way of living that's like obsessive and violent. To me, you know, if I'm trying to make an action movie, there's going to be conflict and violence. Like shit's going to go down. People are going to get hurt. It's kind of like it's cinema. It's you want to see this, you want to have this meaty cinema that's moving and there's danger and surprise. And so all those things were exhilarating to me. When sometimes I guess when I hear the word revenge, I think of something so dark and not very helpful. So that is an element of the film. But to me, it was always like, what's more interesting than that? What's more interesting than that? What's more interesting? So that's just where my head goes.
That makes sense. And, you put her into a world with three very well-drawn characters to round up the ensemble. Technically four, I guess. Because, B has an innocence. Mm-hmm. Gert has a formalistic, she knows all the weapons. She's ready to outfit, fix whatever needs to be fixed to carry out the mission. Of course, Marcia is the leader. And she has those skills to be stronger for the group when she needs to be. And so then June, who's played by Juliette Lewis, is able to round things out as she's someone who's kind of been there, and she's kind of living off the grid away from the other women. And I thought that was an interesting character as well. Was your ensemble on the page ever any bigger than that or smaller than that? Because it seemed like you hit the perfect balance.
No, that was the group. That was the group. It seemed like the right number. I'm not sure why. I sometimes wonder if it was like a Wizard of Oz memory of a movie that made such a big impact on me when I was young. Seeing the four of them go down that road together seemed right.
So is there a Wizard of Oz sense in this film for you? Because you've mentioned it twice now.
Yeah, I learned that about it as I was writing it because I doubled the characters. And when I saw The Wizard of Oz when I was young, I don't even think I clocked that the people in Oz were the same actors as in the real world, except for the witch, but the rest were. And I didn't get that. And I remember when I finally did figure that out, I thought that was so fascinating. I love the idea of a doppelganger. I love stories about doppelgangers. There's something about meeting yourself in another form through the looking glass kind of thing that's, I think, very rich territory for a character to let a character have two dimensions in that way. That could even be opposite. That's exciting to me. That's a kind of radical move for a character to be people. So that to make a whole movie of people who are doubles is really fun.
I was the same way when I saw Wizard of Oz for the first time. I did not connect that it was the same people in both places. So I'm totally with you there. I think most kids were the same way. Well, it's interesting because you have a group dynamic. You have these faceless men, most of them, as your scene enemies. But to create tension in the movie and to keep your characters going and everything going, you created intergroup dynamic tension in which Marcia and Anna turn against each other, naturally. And talk about developing that, because it was an interesting way to go. And again, it's nobody that needs to be killed. It's just kind of an argument about the gray area and about really the mission objective of what they were doing. Because while Anna was into it for a while, she clearly wanted to choose a different path. I
saw it kind of as like that Anna comes into this world and Marcia is like, she's so militant and so black and white about things, right? And
sure.
And I think that she's been there a long time. Like she's been dead a long time. So have the other girls. And Anna comes in sort of fresh meat, right? She's just maybe gotten there, still has a heartbeat, still blood running through her veins. And to me, it's like, I was thinking of Marcia watching her and just being so frustrated that she just won't die. And I like the idea of a character who just wouldn't die. You just couldn't kill her. You just couldn't do it. So that was the conflict, that she was like, come into our group, be like me. I'm your mentor. You're going to do as I say. You're going to be me. And then Anna is something different. And she needed to do something different. And she needed to grow in a different way. And then they had to figure out what they're going to do about that. That they had to go separate ways. And how do you deal with those emotions and that reality? And of course, in this world, what does that mean? Is an extra layer of difficulty.
Yeah. And what was your most important lesson directing actors for your first feature film? Did you have a rehearsal period before the film?
we had a really short rehearsal period, brutally short, but we had a great table read, which confirmed that I cast it well because they could hear the song I wrote. It sounded just like the song, right? So that was a relief. And then luckily, even though we didn't get a lot of rehearsal time, I think for me and this movie, I don't know what other people do, but I picked these actors in a kind of non-traditional way. I picked actors who embodied the part, sounded right, made sense cinematically, and had incredible talent, all that. But I picked them also because of their strong reaction to the script, their like deep connection to the script, their quick like just immediately knowing it was for them, made an impact on me. So we're all there together, so close to the story. And so that was good because we were already in it together. They were there together, and I let them talk about that with each other. Why did this script mean anything to you? And so that gave us like all this common ground. So then when things were flying around and we just had to make our days somehow with things flooding and winds coming and hurling our sets away, we had that ground underneath of us already. So we could just fly and just go really, really fast. That was like probably one of the most important things to establish.
That's good to have that core.
Ooh, hey, I'm jumping in really quick to remind you about Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. You could read us on a desktop or laptop or via our iPad app, Backstory. If you've never read us before, you could check out our free issue. There's a lot in it. It is a full issue that's for free. And if you decide you like what you've read, I hope you will consider becoming a subscriber. And if you want to become a subscriber to sweeten the deal, here is a discount coupon code for you. It is SAVE5. That's save and the number 5. And you could enter that over at backstory.net and you will save $5 off a 1-year subscription. And look, our new issue is coming out soon. You could glance through the table of contents about what's inside our current issue. And look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and iTunes and Spotify and my YouTube watchers of the Zoomcast that all these episodes stem from on the Backstory Magazine YouTube page become subscribers. So thanks for considering. Of course, I also hope that you will make sure to spread the word about Mayday. We want to connect audiences and filmmakers, especially during these trying times for independent films. So make sure to go on social media and talk about it as well. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right back into our interview with writer-director Karen Cinorre about her debut feature film, Mayday.
Was there anything that you needed to rewrite during production? Because being a writer-director, if you needed to, you could, but were you pretty much locked? Or was there something that came up that you needed to rewrite and redo?
I can't rewrite like that because, as I said, I have to be in that totally quiet place. So if I were to do a movie where rewrites would be necessary, I would need a writing partner. My brain's in a different place. I can't write. I will say sometimes an actor cannot get it out in a way that's working. And it would be little adjustments, small edits to the way something's said. But no, I don't have that talent. I don't think I could. I don't know. Maybe I could. But my head's in a totally different place at that point.
How many cameras were you shooting with Sam?
One.
Okay. Was that his preference or yours?
Both. Sam doesn't want to do multiple cameras because then you're doing all this useless coverage that a director gets tempted to use, right? We wanted to be very intentional. Also budget, but I think at one point we might have had a second camera. I don't remember. But no, it was a one camera gig. We notice when something shot with one camera and something shot with many cameras, there's less intention. It's a different animal. This is a different animal. And we wanted to have the focus of her experience. So there's a lot going on. I wanted to make sure we're squarely within the journey and things are happening around what's happening, but you're very intentional about where you are. And just covering everything, then you just have all this stuff. I don't know. We really wanted to just create it in camera as much as we could.
I mean, folks would know Sam's work from Francis Ha. Obviously, he's done a lot of cool stuff. And it was just the cinematography here was absolutely gorgeous, especially that sunset moment kind of in the montage when they're all just kind of chilling out and they're by the water. I mean, it was great. And, you know, the effects that you guys did, I'm sure you were on a low budget as well. The effects of showing Mars in the sky and stars, which is something you kept coming back to. You really knew where to spend your money. You know, like you let nature be your backdrop, except when you're on the U-boat. So that brought you the realism that you needed, but you also saved your money for when you wanted to have the weird control room, you know, in the sub that works so perfectly. You know, editing is the last stage of storytelling. Tell me what you learned about your film in the edit. Were there any major scenes or sequences that you cut, or anything that you wished you could have reshot?
Well, COVID happened, so we couldn't reshoot anything. So that dream had to go away. But yeah, you see what you come back with, and yeah, you wish you had another chance. Everything was so quick, stuff like that. But yeah, we lost a lot of stuff. All that thing you hear, kill your darlings, like we killed everyone right till the last end. You know,
well, wait, tell us what some of the cut scenes would be that people might see on a Blu-ray.
Man, it's too painful.
Really?
But, I mean, just wonderful performances, wonderful, like there's a beautiful explosion. I mean,
were there any subplots that you had to kill that you want to tell us about?
No,
something story connected?
No, the story pretty much stayed the same. I think a lot of what I learned is like sometimes something works in a script on the page and you read it and it flows. And then sometimes in real life, it feels like you're doing something twice a lot. So it's a redundancy when you actually get it into the world, or what, especially if we had rough terrain. So the people aren't moving the way I thought they'd move, and it's rocks, not sand, that kind of thing. So yeah, so it's a redundancy, and you kind of got to get rid of the redundancies, or you just have a bloated movie that's not really gliding over people. It's getting stuck in itself. So repetition is interesting and rhythm is interesting, but redundancy for no reason isn't. So you do something twice and both are beautiful. If both are beautiful, it's heartbreaking because this thing happened on set that's so exquisite, but it's hurting the movie.
Right.
Yeah, and you have to get rid of it.
Well, I mean, what was great was, you know, as your storytelling fell into the surrealist realm, you know, at one point when Anna's going to go kill a group of soldiers, rather than make a bloodbath out of it, you turned it into a musical sequence through interpretive dance, which I thought was a great way to go as well. Because I mean, hey, everybody's in costume, why not? At what point did that come about, and how long did your dance coordination and filming of it take? Because a lot of movies would not go on that stray path, but I am quite glad that you did.
Oh, I'm glad you're glad. That number is beloved by people. I was surprised. I mean, I'm always surprised at any reaction, but people love it. I think there's this sense of abandon there and fun, and I just think it's visually fun, and the piece of music is so lovely, the Liberace. But yeah, it was just we had less than a day to shoot that. It was natural to me to have these soldiers all in the same uniform. Military is so synchronized, the way they move together when they're training, and there's synchronized swimmers in the film. Like there's this joy that happens in my head. These little endorphins go off when I see synchronized movement. I think with everyone, I think that's why the Rockettes work. I think that's why, a lot of things work. And so that repetition of the military movement going into a dance made perfect sense. Plus she's in this sort of broken fugue state.
Right.
So, and I have no interest in showing a bloodbath. So I was like, I remember I was like, violence, back to that word that I was always thinking about in Anna's relationship to violence. I was like, what does violence feel like? I was really trying to get to the heart of that a bit. And I think it feels you're kind of like high on it. Like if you're perpetrating it.
Sure. I mean, in the recent, sequel to, the Suicide Squad over the summer, Harley Quinn goes on a violent spree and it turns into animation. And all the blood is replaced by flowers. Sorry if you haven't seen it, but yeah, like so.
No, it's okay. But that's
in that realm.
It's like you become another thing. You're not yourself. You're doing something outside your body. Like it's so to me, that didn't seem like a leap in a weird way. So.
Yeah. I mean, it works great. You you had a lot of intense things going on. What did you learn about explosions and shooting underwater as a director? Because, you know, your water sequences looked great.
Oh, I love all that stuff. I mean, even in my short work, it's always like trying to get things flying in the air. I love wind and kineticism and all the elements, water, fire. I mean, I just love having that as a palette. And it was thrilling. I had a pyrotechnician named Drago who carried a briefcase around and made things explode. And it was so cool. What a great team. A team of Croatian, mostly men who loved working for a woman, total surprise, and just felt so connected to the story and wanted it to really soar, and just did extraordinary things to make that happen, and gave me more than I asked for. They would say, you haven't asked for enough. There should be another airplane. There should be a sub interior and exterior, and it should be 3 times as big as you said it was. And we're going to do that for you, because that's what this story really needs. So that was
How many days were you shooting in the water tank?
We were in a public pool, and we had one. If you ask like how long did it take to shoot anything, my answer will pretty much be 1 day.
1 day, okay. And it was great when you shot in the ocean too. Sometimes having the camera right out.
We had we did some stuff in the ocean too, which we cut together. We went out into some boats one day and shot Grace swimming through the storm. And there's a scene with Marcia and Anna in the water. She's teaching Anna how to float. Right. And it's so interesting because, you know, great. Oh, thank you. They were exactly opposite. So the scene as I wrote it, where she's teaching her how to float, was a calm day and a sinister scene. And that day the wind picked up and it was chaos, and the water was like, there were waves everywhere, and the scene had a totally different tone than I wrote it. And then same thing, going through the storm, we go out clear as glass, not a wave anywhere. It was just Grace's acting that gave us the sense of danger in the water.
It worked great. You know, one of the things that I was really taken by, again, like I said in the beginning, watch this film with headphones. The sound design was just superior. It was just excellent. All the analog sounds, the beeps, just the radio wave.
Sound. I love sound. Sound is the best tool. I mean, it's not an afterthought for me. I heard this film before I saw it, for sure. I could hear it. And there were certain sounds that intrigued me. Those analog things you're talking about, the static, right? The mysteriousness of those faraway voices on a radio. Yeah, I could just hear it all. And for me, it starts there. It's written into the script too. The sounds are written in, the quality of the sounds are written in. It's not an afterthought to me. Like, I think a lot of films, you know, you shoot it and then you do the sound, or that you shoot it and then you do the music. You know, I don't think it needs to be like that. I see it more as something you do together from the very beginning. I love the score as well. I mean, an ethereal score like that was just great. Now let's talk about the ending for a second, because there are a lot of ways you could go. These could be, you know, a legion of women that are out there to protect other women, or you could go down the path you chose, in which Anna basically chooses to go back to Dimitri. And, you know, some people are like, well, was Dimitri all that? Was he a good guy? We're just going to obviously take Anna's word for it, because clearly she wouldn't go through all that if he wasn't. And, you know, it's give mankind a chance. Not all men are completely horrendous. I'm curious about what other ideas you played with for your ending before you arrived there. Kind of maybe something from the early drafts as well. I like the ending. I wasn't sure where it was going to go, and I'm so curious to hear where it could have gone. Well, I never thought of it as her going back to Dimitri. I saw it as her saving him, sort of twisting around the rescue idea of men obsessively wanting to rescue women, or something that these women play with a lot there. So I wanted, to me, some of the most important, most valuable things in my life have been my friendships with men of all different ages. It's a really precious thing to me. And Dimitri, you know, Theo is such a angel of an actor. I mean, he's like an angel, was on our set, and so lovely. And I just liked his presence, and I liked that she had a friend in the world. Sure. And it was going to be an all girl ensemble, and I wanted a little bit of balance.
That makes sense.
Also Max in the Kitchen is an older gentleman from Pusher, the Pusher films, and kind of iconic to me. And that there are different kinds of people in this world. It's populated by different kinds of people. And Dimitri was that to me. The movie's about friendship in a strange way, I've figured out. And so, yes, I thought about a different million kinds of endings for her.
Do you want to tell us any of some of the other ways it could have ended?
Well, I remember, I always hated that in The Wizard of Oz that she left Oz. So I wondered if she was really going to go back. And especially but then I realized it's not that she went back. I mean, I want Anna to choose life and to go back to it and feel like these girls are with her still inside of her and made her stronger. And I love the way that women do crazy things so that the next one can have it better. Like they'll put up with something so that their daughter or their friend or the next tennis player won't have to deal with some shit, right? So I really see that in life, that women will sacrifice so the next girl can have an easier time. And I saw it very clearly that they were going to help her go back and have more a hopeful outlook that her life could be better. And for me, it was really about going in front of a microphone.
But because her going back was at their peril, because her going back, it comes back to your thematic with a shooting star and the star dying. It takes all the other stars around it with it. And they knew that they were going to be erased per se, or faded into a memory. And they still were backing her journey back. So that was another wild element too.
Yeah, I will tell you something funny. I just remembered. It all comes back to you in these talks. You forget a lot. But so I brought her back alone, but it was heartbreaking to lose those girls and have them disappear. Right. So in my head, I never told anyone else. I sort of wondered if they would be back in that world, in the real world, in some form. But it never worked. It never worked in the script. I could never make it work. I just couldn't. And I just didn't want to lose them, but it had to happen. And so it was. And then when we got to Croatia, Grace was starting to have this feeling that she really wanted the girls with her at the end. And she's like, couldn't they be at the wedding? Couldn't they be in the, and I was like, I totally knew how she felt. Like, you just don't want to let go of them. And, it was hard. And then we shot the scene and she came right up to me after, and, she's alone on the stage at the end, and Dimitri's beside her, but it's such a one shot of Anna. And she came right up to me after Grace did. And she said, Karen, I just felt like I was holding the hands of all the other girls when we shot that. And I just said, then we're doing something right. We're doing something right.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Juliette Lewis in the bathroom working at the wedding?
Yeah. She's a double. So she's a bathroom attendant, which I've always wondered about that job. Has that become a job?
Right. But I mean, it was just interesting because there was that duality from place to place, like Wizard of Oz as well. And I like that, she has a microphone now. Like, she's going to use her voice was a way to look at the ending. My favorite piece of dialogue was, when she's having that final argument with Marcia, and Marcia says, I made you a hero. And she just screams back, you made me a psychopath. And then Marcia screams back, same thing. I thought that line was very inspired, very inspired. But so I know we're running out of time. Tell me your toughest scene, both on the page and as a director, and how you navigated through it to rise up to meet the creative challenge. So first off, start with your toughest scene on the page, the one that you kept coming back to over and over again to figure out how to solve. And then your toughest scene as a director on set, and how you got through that. It
was a tough shoot, of course, but I'm going to answer it in a non-philosophical way and just say the logistics of riding motorcycles is not easy. These are dirt roads, there's bumps everywhere. I mean, just the terrain and not having a big crew to do grounds and that kind of thing. Just all the stunts, just battling them out, just figuring out. It was a new terrain for me, but not really. I have things floating around in my films, and I have to find these ways to do it that aren't the way that it's done. And So those were really, really challenging. I wondered at one point if they would never be able to ride around. And I really wanted that for them. I wanted them to have a movie like that where they could ride motorcycles and have fun like that. And those kinds of terrain challenges were on the page because I couldn't even imagine how we were going to pull it off.
Right.
And they were on set. And on the page, I kept it. I was told to keep it. And then we just did it over and over until we found a way to pull it off. So it was just persistence and stuff.
Do you remember a scene on the page that you found yourself rewriting over and over again? It was really tough to crack?
Probably her conversation with Dimitri. It's, you know, he doesn't have a huge role in the film, but he's sort of the thing that makes her remember her life from before, because he's her pal. And like, how do you write a scene where she hears a guy dying on a submarine and remembers it's her friend? You know, I mean, that's like it's a hard one to pull off. And I like that I wanted my characters to have this way of speaking that had a little bit of naval code in it. And I like that their language is a little bit different and has that inspiration. So you're not only writing something a little bit tricky, but you're writing it in a tricky way.
You also had the thematic of coming back to her driving through the tunnel over and over again, which was interesting. And of course, it's showing her journey, tracking her journey. What did it mean to you? Because it was definitely an image that you didn't shy away from. And you really liked it. And I could see it changing in editing as to where you placed it in the film, because something like that could be kind of modular.
Yeah, for me, well, I never, so in the movie and in the script, it was always when she would fall asleep, she would dream about her past life, but not her real life, but not understand what it was.
Right.
So when we meet her, she's in her car. So that car is the dream every single time.
That's great. And that's what Marcia said she hated. You know, they were waiting for her dreams to die so that she could fully be immersed in their world. They never did.
Yeah. And it's like, it was a sad place for her. She's living out of her car, but it was also something that, you know, it was a vehicle. It was it's her way out,
Sure.
Maybe, you know, so.
What's next? What are you working on next? Are you
I'm dabbling. I have a few scripts.
That you've already completed?
No.
Oh, okay.
Now I'll have to dig into that quiet place again and determine which one is next. But I'm doing a departure. I've already started and working with Sam again on this, and I'm doing a documentary that is about a village upstate that is populated by special needs adults. And it's a very fascinating place, and we're enjoying shooting that already.
Does it have a title?
Yes, it's called The Last People, after the August Sonnenberg book, where he does portraits of all the people in society, starting with the aristocrats and going down and down, class, race, everything. And the developmentally disabled people, special needs people, are the last people. So that
sounds great. Well, look, I absolutely loved Mayday. I hope everybody spreads the word about it. It's just such a trippy experience, and you know, especially seeing it at a time during the pandemic when Sundance happened for me, where everybody felt so locked down. Like, it was a great escape as well. But you know, even as we have a little more freedom now because of everybody getting vaccinated, and I hope they continue to do so, I highly recommend everyone to see it. Karen, congrats on a job well done. And thank you so much for your time today.
Of course. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Special thanks again to writer-director Karen Cinorre for coming down and being so generous with her time to talk about her debut feature film, Mayday. Of course, if you like the film Mayday, don't forget to support it on social media, because connecting audiences and filmmakers is what we're all about right now. And we want this film to get out there and get the attention it deserves. And remember, folks, this was a virtual screening. So if you want to get in on these free virtual screenings and watch the film at home and then hear the Q&A before anyone else, just go to backstory.net/events to sign up for invites. Of course, while you're surfing around online, don't forget to check out Backstory Magazine. You could read us on a desktop or laptop or via our iPad app, Backstory. You know, if you've never read us before, you could check out our free issue. And if you decide you want to become a subscriber, we would love to have you. So to sweeten the deal, I'm offering you discount coupon code SAVE5 that will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription to Backstory Magazine. And look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners in iTunes and Spotify, and my YouTube watchers of all these Zoomcasts on the Backstory Magazine YouTube page become subscribers, so thanks for considering. The Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith podcast is a copyright of Unlikely Films Incorporated in 2021. All rights reserved. Folks, if you ever want to drop me a line, you could find me on social media at Yo Goldsmith on Twitter or at Backstory_mag on Twitter. It's those same handles on Instagram, Yo Goldsmith on Instagram or Backstory_mag on Instagram. I have a Facebook fan page. I don't use it that often, but you can reach out there. Of course, you could always email me, backstoryletters@gmail.com. I promise not to respond immediately, but that email box gets a little full, as you can imagine, but I will respond. I will respond. I do go through it at least once a week. But look, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, the publisher of Backstory Magazine and the host of the Q&A, thanking you for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.